That's better. Get that thing all lined up. Good morning, Bookless classroom. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. I am here as the teacher in the classroom, as I always am. Generally a little late. I had some things to do for this one. I found something out last night. I really have got to, well, you know what happened? The last week I got started on the Bookless classroom and forgot totally about doing the early birds, so we got on late. This time there was so much new information. Like I'm doing okay. And then all of a sudden I got this like bombshell of some information, which was clearly about the Philistines. What? Those giants? You just have to get your head on straight a little bit, right? Right, Goliath? Yeah, that's who we're talking about. If you're from the early birds, you're like, Goliath? He was a Philistine. So we have more. I mean, what a wonderful experience to take your history and then blend it so seamlessly with your Bible knowledge. It is faith building is what it is. It builds your faith. It is day 306. It is February 3rd. Hello, gals. So happy that you are hoping you're celebrating some wonderful birthdays. Laura's coming up on the 13th, not the 14th. So happy birthday to Laura. Lots of February birthdays with my gals. Okay, so let's keep going. The very first thing we do is we go to the Reader's Digest. And we are on the new Reader's Digest, the brand new one, October 1937. So let's get to that. My brand new one, clearly. Not the brand new one. Not a brand new one. My brand new one. And now we're in trouble. Oh, there it is. So, as I was reading this, because I do read this Reader's Digest ahead to pick out the ones that we want to read. And as you can see, I only have one mark here in this October 1937 Reader's Digest, and that already has a check mark on it. So what does that mean? It means I want to read every single article in this Reader's Digest. Every single article. One or two of them may have been like, but I wasn't going to mark those as non-read. I mean, that's how many articles are so good in this Reader's Digest. So let's keep going. I read you one of these too, didn't I? Oh, about the City of Salt. That's right. That's where I got the City of Salt from. So you didn't even get... See how valuable this one Reader's Digest is? Let me also do something that I didn't do on... I didn't read the back of the 1937 one. And I didn't read the back of this one yet either. I think I'm going to start with the... We'll see. I already told you what I'm going to read. I want to show you that in the inside cover here also is a list of what they're reading. So, recent favorites at the bookstore as listed by Publishers Weekly. That is, all right, Northwest Package by Kenneth Roberts. $2.75 for that book, which is kind of expensive when you think about it in 1937. The Years by Virginia Woolf. And So, Victoria by Vaughn Wilkins. Conversation at Midnight by Edna St. Vincent Millay. American Dream by Michael Foster. The Wind from the Mountains by Trygve, I don't know, Trygve Gulbrandsen. City of Bells by Elizabeth Goudge. The Crime Wave at Blandings by P.G. Wodehouse. Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. Blind Man's Year by Warwick Deeping. Children of Strangers by Lyle Saxon. I looked that one up and possibly might read that one. So those are some interesting ones. There's a whole bunch of them that we could think about reading for our reading room, right? This is by Victor G. Heiser, MD, author of An American Doctor's Odyssey, Reading for Health. Writes a patient in a tuberculosis sanitarium. That's where they put people who are ill. We'll read that tomorrow. We'll look at the backs of both the March edition and the October edition. Let's get into it though. Reader's Digest. An article a day from leading magazines in condensed permanent booklet form. Yeah, permanent. How about that? This is the 16th year, October 1937, volume 31, number 186. You can't take it with you. Condensed from the Rotarian, William Moulton Marston. I said, no, I can't go to a show tonight. I'm over my ears in work, and no theater in the world will make me forget it. Come, said my wife with finality. So I went. We saw the Pulitzer Prize play, You Can't Take It With You. Of course you can't take it with you, your money and worldly success, to the next world, nor can you take your work with you to that hilarious comedy. It chains you to the present. It's the story of a successful businessman who started for the office one day and discovered in the elevator that he didn't want to make any more money. So he rode down and never returned to business again. Farcically, how about that for a word? Farcically. Farcically, but nonetheless, convincingly, everybody in the play makes him happy by the very simple rule of not postponing what he most enjoys. During the past 2 years, I have asked 2,997 persons, what do you live for? Remember, we talked about this. This is a great time for a pause in this. We talked about how the universities and regulation have taken over the spirit of humanity and curiosity and interest by saying you can and can't do this, because you had people who are worldly famous like Philip Zimbardo fuck everybody up with his research. Fuck everybody up and everything up with his research, and then pointed the finger at Stanley Milgram did it. Not the same thing, Zimbardo. And you know it. And why do you look like that evangelical preacher begging for money? A seed. Begging for somebody's seed. So that's how we used to find out information. Reader's Digest could easily keep that anonymous, whereas it is not anonymous at the universities. I see you. I know who's coming to these things. I know those students. It's not anonymous. I am able to look at handwriting. There's a lot of things that weren't anonymous to me, right? Now I could put it out of my mind till I had complainers who were costing me my job. Lucy, enough. How do you just poke your head up for a second to see that dog? Sit down. Sit down. Sit down right now. See what you did? That poor dog can't even go outside. Barking your head off. Sit down, I said. Okay, so that is an unbelievable way to conduct research. 2,997 people, that's a lot of people to get to respond. I didn't have 2,000, almost 3,000 people respond to my surveys. And for my master's thesis and for my dissertation, I didn't have that kind of response. I had to beg. I had to totally beg. And even then, don't ask me how that happened. Somebody behind the scenes got me that prayer answered because nobody was doing it for me in a Catholic school. Okay. But they took that away. This is no different. And I want you to hear me on this because I've said it before. We need to be heard on this. This is no different than midwives. We had, or even household help. I mean, nobody minds being household help if they're paid well and if they're appreciated, especially if you have children, and that's what I want to do as a household helper, is to be involved with your children or help you raise your children. And you think about the self-correcting mechanism in that. I want you to think about that. If there was a stranger in the house, and in particular, well, not in particularly, if there's a stranger in the house, somebody who's not part of the family, I might conduct myself a little better. Now, after a while, when the person is part of the house, I probably would conduct myself the same way. But maybe in the interim, I might have learned some good habits about how to talk to my kids, how to correct them. And the household helper would have the advantage of seeing this and knowing exactly where you needed the help. They had that nanny show, right? So bringing in that nanny. What if you had somebody there at your side, which is what we did in the olden days. That's how people made money. And again, as long as you appreciated it and didn't take advantage of me, that was a wonderful thing. Now think of the grandmothers who might be able to provide that role for your children. The role of a teacher, right? The role of a household sort of nursemaid for those people who enjoy doing that. But no, we can't have midwives because of all of the regulations that they forced upon people. Not that the people asked for, they were forced upon the people. It is no different than what we see in the classrooms being forced upon the teachers, right? By implants, by imposters, by people who were set up to stir things up and make those movements look bad, right? Okay, like Black Lives Matter, to make those movements look bad. I mean, seriously, Black Lives Matter? I mean, seriously. I discovered that 94%, so during the past 2 years, I've asked 2,997 persons, what do you live for? I discovered that 94% are merely enduring the present while hopefully waiting for some utopia in the future. But I'm not merely enduring, but in some ways, yes. And then what's the next line? Poor souls. They are wasting today's realities for tomorrow's speculations, sitting bored at a great entertainment, waiting for a better show which may never open. It's a common failing. People in every walk of life are afflicted with the futurite delusion, and the forms it takes are many. There is in business, for instance, the person who regards his present occupation as an undeserving interlude, a mere marking of time until fate brings him the bonanza he merits. I know two young fellows who had been earning $75 a week in a big corporation. During the Depression, their department was discontinued, but they were kept on as correspondence clerks at $35. Harry accepted the clerk's position condescendingly and endured his duties grudgingly, dreaming always of the big future job he was bound to get. Naturally, he did his work poorly. His indifference resulted finally in a serious loss to the firm, and he was discharged. He is still looking for that big job. Dick reasoned that if his present job had to be correspondence work, he might as well have the daily fun of doing it the best he could. He analyzed the firm's form letters and tabulated responses. Some, he discovered, were not effective. He burned the midnight Mazdas, composing new ones, which his chief let him try out. They produced excellent results, and Dick was given more responsible work. Now he is back where he was before the Depression, with a yet more promising job ahead. He learned to like what he had to do, lived each day for its own sake, and made the future come to him. Now I think I do that. Once I asked a healthy, well-to-do mother what she was living for. I only hope my nerves can stand the ordeal until my husband retires and the children get homes of their own, she said. I'm living for that blessed day when I can rest. Her nerves stood the strain, but when her husband retired, the children married, she went to pieces. She is now a nervous wreck. Her maternal activities might have made her present worth living, but she merely put up with them. And when they were gone, the future she had dreamed of became a future of nothingness. Besides the wistful waiters, there is the futurite who suffers from the greener pastures illusion. A Hollywood actress told me recently, "Oh, I am just existing until I get my divorce and marry X." This will be her second divorce, but not her last. The man she isn't married to always seems to her irresistibly fascinating. This greener pastures illusion, in a less acute form, blights the life of many a married couple. The mere fact that the present is within their power to enjoy, if they will, makes the future alone seem enjoyable, for it is easier to dream of another partnership than actively to make the most of an existing one. In truth, there is no future so certain that its approach justifies the abandonment of present effort. And stark tragedy too often follows when we forget that truth. Tim Hardy had been begging his father to help him build a hut. There was nothing Hardy wouldn't do for the child, but building a hut of old scraps of tar paper seemed inadequate. He didn't realize that what Tim wanted was the fun of working together. So Hardy told Tim that he would have a regular playhouse built as soon as he could spare the money. The boy said that would be swell, but why couldn't they make a little hut until the big one was ready? Hardy laughed and said he'd see. 2 days later, Tim was run over in front of the school. He was dying when his father reached the hospital. Hardy had to bend over to hear the child's whisper, "We didn't get my hut built, did we?" I asked Babe Ruth what was the most exciting moment of his career, and he told me it was during the third game of his last World Series. He was in a slump, his team was behind, and 2 strikes had been called on him. The crowd began to boo. Ruth's desire to win rose the emergency. rose to the emergency. He pointed to the distant spot in the field and yelled at the hooting fans, "I'll knock it out there for you." He hit the next ball where he said he would. It was the longest home run ever made at Wrigley Field. I asked him what he thought about when the ball was pitched. "What I think about?" he snorted. "Why, what I always think about, just hitting the ball. There's your champion, the man who keeps his attention riveted on his present act and responds to every crisis with all there is in him." With the outcome of a World Series and his own contract hanging in the balance, Babe Ruth thought only about hitting the ball. The next time you're in a jam, when a string of mistakes behind you and everything hanging with a string of mistakes behind you and everything hanging on your next move, forget both past and future. Think about just one thing: hitting the ball. Let yourself go. Give everything you have to your desire to win before the crisis passes. It will be the best performance you ever produced because of the emotional steam behind it. Every crisis offers you extra power. You'd better use it then, because you can't take it with you. I remember Shelby, who always wanted to travel, but he kept putting travel off until he should have more money and leisure. When he was 46, his aunt died, leaving him her estate. "Now you can take that world trip," a friend remarked. "I could, yes," Shelby conceded. "But if I invest this money, I may make enough to retire and live abroad." His habit of losing the present in fantasies of the future had become so ingrained that he could not seize on any reality. The event which might have gratified his long-held desire to travel destroyed it. You would be surprised at the number who tell me they are waiting for money or until the children grow up to travel. But they needn't wait. The travelingest family I know owns nothing but an 8-year-old car. In that, the parents and 3 children have crossed America 5 times. Living on a shoestring, stopping at tourist camps, they are poor, but they don't make that an excuse for postponing what they want most to do now. When their desire for travel fades, it will leave behind it a permanent enrichment of their lives. There is one desire above all that we must grasp at once, lest it fade forever. That is the desire for culture. For the past 8 years, a man I know has been promising himself to read certain books when he gets the time. He hasn't opened them yet and probably never will. His once eager desire for culture has been killed by postponement. How many people do you know who are incapable of reading anything but the newspaper? They feel a vague need for fresh mental stimulus, but they know culture will always be there when they have the time for it. Culture will be there, but not their desire for it. Some interest in ideas and music and pictures arises in everybody, says William James, who is the father of American psychology. 10 minutes a day of poetry or meditation, or an hour or 2 a week at music, provided we began now, would give us in time the fullness of all we desire. Do you hear that? 10 minutes a day of poetry or meditation or an hour or 2 a week at music, provided we began now, would give us in time the fullness of all we desire. Well, maybe not all. I could use a man. But, I mean, that is just really beautiful. What an unbelievably beautiful sentiment, right? if I tilt my head a little bit like something, it doesn't look like my glasses. Maybe they're not, they're crooked. I laid them on the table, they're crooked. How does she go from tears to glasses on a table that are crooked? Oh my gosh, William James, those words are so beautiful. That hope or that promise is so beautiful. Because what are you starting? Poetry or meditation? Or music? No. What you're starting is your dream. What's your dream? That's what you're starting. I mean, this is my dream. So that's what I'm doing. I mean, I don't mean to be so like, I got it. But I wouldn't be here teaching it if I didn't have it to some degree, right? You wouldn't be watching if I didn't have it to some degree. So you're not starting poetry or meditation or music. You're starting something that you love, something that you see yourself in years from now, right? That's what you're starting. But by sparing ourselves the daily tax, we dig the grave of our higher possibilities, end quote. That's William James. I need to, you know what I think I'm going to do? Maybe that's going to be one of my first embroideries. Yes, I'm not going to do these feel-good statements. I'm going to do stop and think really hard about it. Are you still thinking? Because I don't see you tearing up. So I don't think you're thinking about it hard enough. You cannot take yourself out of the present by switching your attention to what may happen tomorrow. You are in the present whether you like it or not. There is just one thing you can take with you into the future, and that is the knowledge of how to live. Oh, girlfriend, that is what we're doing here. You can win that only by living. You can win that only by living in the real world of every day. If you have that knowledge, you hold a magic key which unlocks tomorrow's treasury of happiness when time pushes it into the present. Well, I needed some pushing. I needed some motivation. But they pushed it into the present, didn't they? Didn't my little angels of motivators push this into the present for me? So again, it's just hard to complain. I love the fact that I'm in a smaller space dealing with a lot fewer things. I don't like the fact that I worked very hard for some of those things and I don't know where they are. That I don't like. But if the wealth was spread like I want it to be, that'll be okay too. I could use some more clothes though. I really could. I mean, come on. I'm on this thing. I really could use, and 50% of my clothes were taken from me, and the best of them too. Yeah, I had all of my hang up clothes. You don't hang up clothes because you can stuff them in a drawer. The riches of embarrassment. So this is the little excerpt now to fill in the space, right? So that's how they laid out the pages so that the next article that we read tomorrow, The People's Big Stick, adapted from the New Republic by J.C. Furness. When we read that tomorrow, it starts on a new page, right? So here's our filament. The riches of embarrassment. It is surely discreditable under the age of 30 not to be shy. Oh my gosh, I love this. I love this. Introverts, pay attention here. You've got a champion. What? Somebody's championing the introverts. I didn't, what? It's not me. Now stop. I can champion introverts. My oldest son is an introvert. Surely champion introverts. And this is why I love this. It is surely discreditable under the age of 30 not to be shy. Oh my gosh, I was discreditable. That is faux show. I wasn't shy at the age of 6 months. Self-assurance in the young betokens a lack of sensibility. The boy or girl who is not shy at 22 will at 42 become a bore. Do you think I'm a bore? What the fuck? For shyness is the protective fluid within which our personalities are able to develop. Let the shy understand, therefore, that their disability is not merely an inconvenience, but also a privilege. Let them regard their shyness as a gift rather than an affliction. Let them consider how intolerable are those of their contemporaries who are not also shy. By Harold Nicholson from Small Talk, Harcourt, Brace. I know Harcourt is a publisher, right? It is. I don't know what that Brace is. So everybody, let's embarrass the shy person. Point fingers at the shy person. Applaud shyness. No. Burn it out of those shy people under 30. What's ticking? Tell me, what's ticking, shy person under 30? That's my son right there. That's my son, my older son right there. Let them consider how intolerable are those of their contemporaries who are not also shy. Yeah. We don't need to hear what they have to say when they're 23. We do not. Bravo, Harold. Okay, so let's get to our woo. This is a little discombobulated. Wah, wah. There are likely people who are better than me at teaching history, but I don't think that there's anyone better than me that there's no one better than me that I've ever seen teaching history with this kind of, the word is that I'm thinking of is intersection, but that's not the word. Integration. There we go. Without this integration of all of these different materials, if I just read one textbook of world history, dear Jesus Christ, I could not stand it. Now, out of these two books, there's one section on world history, but out of this set of encyclopedias, there is one section on world history, but this whole volume is basically world history. If you're taking a look at here, the history of the world, but there's also then before that, the history of art and, well, there's foreign language there. And then the rest of this are the countries, and I know there's a history of literature here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, history of art, history of literature, world history, and then every place on earth and their present state as well as historic state. All right? So this whole volume is filled with history. So it's not really put together like a history book. This is really put together more like an encyclopedia. This book here, which is good for me because then I could look up like I did Greece and find out a lot of the background information that we found on Greece. let's go ahead and get to that. I think I'm going to set this up just slightly differently. Okay, there we go. Now, but when we put together, and so this kind of information is coming from the Southwestern volume series, is what they call it. Southwestern volume series is all, they're not calling it encyclopedia, you know, they're not calling it a history book, whatever. Doesn't matter. But that's, you're getting it more as a reference textbook, right? This book that I have here in my hands, this one, an Encyclopedia of World History, is more like a world history book. And this is very thorough. But once again, if we end up just, let's say this was the history book series that your school was using, pretty outdated, but whatever, it's history. And who knows when the newer versions, what they decided to do with history, right? Is Allie a daughter of the Confederate? I don't know. Anyway. So, using this one is very detailed. So, one of the things that we bring here in the classroom, even though as introducing our Reader's Digest article, so introducing more historical information, bringing it up to date. Historical information, bringing the information up to date. Up to date information from AI. I'm pointing to my AI. If you take a look at this, you can see what I do on a regular basis. And also, let me remind you as well that this is cleaned up. This, what I'm showing you across the top here with all of my tabs and links there, that's what I got to do. With all my tabs and links there, that's cleaned up. I just cleaned that up before I came on. And these are all of my conversations. What percentage of the World Heritage sites are also their religious site? Are also on their religious sites, about 20%. I think that was the only one, so that's cleaned up. I don't need to know that any longer. Historical site demolition verb. So this is the student housing at the university. So this was my first series of questions about verb and the student housing. This was my, this is the PDF document on the housing and which one was being demolished there. This is the rest of the conversation on Verve to find out, because the University of Virginia, Verve is not part of their campus. So this is interesting, right? You end up getting this dark cloud over UNESCO as well as the University of Virginia that has everything to do with Kane, architects, and subtext, right? Read the subtext, motherfucker. That's all I think about that. And yeah, and then they're right by Zion Crossroads as well. So I put a comment in on that. I still find that to be interesting. Here is History of New York. So we're reading. I changed my books to Orphan Trains, which really doesn't have anything to do with this. So that's more on Orphan Trains. And then I got to, is Crete Capernaum from the Bible? So I'm trying to get some of these cities matched up to understand Greece a little bit better. As I started to say, there are people who are probably much better history teachers than I am. However, I don't know, and I haven't seen somebody who's better at taking materials from different sources and really putting together a history that addresses the Bible. How about that? That addresses the Bible. I'm not saying it uses it as a superior source, but from what I'm finding, it's got the details, right? And when I go and find something out from the historic books, from our encyclopedias, our history books, right? I find a matching language, which is slightly different, but then pieces things together more easily for me from the Bible. All right? Because I know the Bible. I don't know it perfectly. I don't have it memorized by any long shot, but I do know the Bible. Okay. So that's my first question here. But let's just go through it. I find this to be interesting. Let's just go through it. All right. So this is our topic today, is about the Philistines. And what I just gave you was a background about how I'm coming to find out the information that we can integrate secular history with biblical history. Okay? Happens accidentally, doesn't happen on purpose. But, but then I look into it on purpose, like Cyrus the Great. I mean, there were a lot of purposeful things there, including Cyrus's decision to free the Israelites and to match prophecy, right? I mean, I just find that to be so fascinating. But then we come down the line here and we see no clear associations with what is going on next. Now, I know that there are associations when Paul comes around. Let's take a look at this from the Bible. When Paul comes into history, Paul preaches in Greece. But let's take a look at this to kind of get a little bit of our verbiage more on the same page. All right? So, oh, no, I don't think I need that. So one of the things I come across is a map that's got Armenia on it. All right, this is interesting because what I have here as Anatolia, and I don't think that that's right, although it is partially right. Anatolia, I believe, is Turkey. So I'm going to ask that right now. All right? And this is how I do things. Okay, so Anatolia is 97% of modern day Turkey. Armenia may be the other 3%. Let me see. The Hittite connection, as you suspected, Anatolia is the heartland of the Hittite Empire. Their capital, Hattusa, look at that, Hat USA, was located in north central Anatolia. Biblical overlap. Uriah the Hittite, Bathsheba's husband, was a descendant of the culture. While the great empire had collapsed by King David's time, Neo-Hittite city-states still existed. Okay. The thing that we know that brings all of this together for us is we know that the Israelites were given the Canaanite lands. There were some Canaanites that God said, as I just read in the Bible, you're coming in here and you're taking this. There are others that God said, you leave your hands off. They I promised to Lot. So there are areas here that they could not come in and conquer. And there were areas that they could come in and conquer. But what was known was that anything that ended in the tights, Moabites, Ammonites, I don't know about Avites. They are in there. They're in the Bible. I'm just getting to that name now. But they were destroyed by the Philistines. Avites were destroyed by the Philistines. So now we're getting some language and some cultures that are associated with the Bible that we know a little bit. We understand it's a biblical perspective, right? We understand it's a Jewish perspective. However, it's pretty doggone good. They don't have a perspective of a simple list of who are your kings and queens and the battles that they won. They've got a list of their history as a people. So this makes things pretty interesting to me. All right. So, and I know I've asked that question before, so that's why I was pretty sure, but I don't remember it. Clearly I didn't remember it when I was pointing out where Anatolia was here. That's Turkey. That's modern day Turkey. And guess where Armenia is? Now here we had the arrow, right? So when I get to Armenia, notice that the arrow also comes up here, right? So I just clicked on Armenia and there's the arrow, all right? So I know it's north of this beginning of the Hittites. That is what I have as circled as Anatolia. So right up there, let me make sure I've got it pointing to it. You're going to see the circle that comes for Anatolia. That's the Hittite. So that's the beginning of Turkey. Then I've got the arrow that comes up with Armenia. I know it's north of this area, but I don't know much else. And so then I am looking at this map again, and I think I can do this. There's Crete. So we were talking, and I said clearly they went to the mainlands and then they went to the islands. Why would they think they went to the islands and then the mainland? That's really not what it seems. It seems like maybe after the flood they just got the hell out of there in boats and things and started their lives on islands rather than the mainland. So I'm asking about, because I see this map here and I'm trying to get more familiar with Greece because I really don't know anything about Greece, right? It's even hard for me to put together things from the Bible with Greece. I have to be reminded. Yeah, that was basically Greece. When he's writing to the Thessalonians, Thessalia was part of Greece, all right? So, but I don't know. Well, I mean, it was even, unfamiliar to me. It's familiar, but unfamiliar. Is Athens still the capital of Greece? And yes, it is. And was it always then? And what about Sparta? I know nothing really. So that's what I'm trying to do is put these sources together so I have a stronger foundation of their knowledge. One of the things I came across is that they're basically Eastern Orthodox, but that would have been a Christian religion. So it makes me think we have to examine exactly what were they before the Eastern Orthodox. And what they was they had Greek mythology. But why are you telling me about these Greek mythological characters as if they are real? You're explaining them to me as if they are real. So Apollo was a god. He's considered a Greek god, but he was real. And so they're willing to let go of their imperial powers over time, not call themselves gods, but kings. Over time, they relinquished that imperial power. But that does not mean it didn't start with an imperial power, a godly power, right? A creator kind of power. No, I wouldn't put it that far, right? I don't think that the gods are creators. Doesn't sound like it. Not much for them anyway, with their one-eyed sons and stuff like that, and embarrassed and throwing them away. Maybe that's because you had an ant crawl up her vag. You know, seems to me like there's some repercussions to your bad behavior. I'm just saying, Zeus, bad behavior. So I start asking about this city here. I want to know a little bit more about Kephatorum. No, Kephatorum. I thought there was an I in there. So that's where we start our day today. Okay? You mean we're just getting started? Yeah, kind of. Let me go back to one more slide then. So here we've got now, and we read this the other day. So now we've got Greece here, and we see Crete down here at the bottom, right? Right here. There's Crete. So and this is where it seems like Greece is starting from, is Crete. So I want to know a little bit more about Crete, and I want to get the Bible names a little bit more like this, but that's not the direct question that I'm really going for, that kind of thing. So in this gold colored area here is Greece, and then you can see what they did, and this makes you see that they really were more about the seafarers, right? They're more about the sea. They know more about the sea. They are seafarers. And then look at how they stay along the coast here, with the exception of the peninsula area, which is called what is that called? The Balkan Peninsula. With the exception of that peninsula, the rest of it is all coastal that they're conquering. So they're conquering these areas from the water, and it seems like they're coming from Crete. So I want to know a little bit more about that. But then as I'm doing my research, I come across this map. And what you can't see there is, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently then. Just give me a second. All right. Okay. There we go. So how about that? Huh? Now I'm recognizing. Now I recognize. And here are a few things I recognize. Number one, I recognize that that word is Asia. And what we're talking about is Asia Minor. So all the Middle East used to be called Asia Minor. So when we're talking about, from these history books, Asia, Africa, which is basically Egypt, all the way to China, we go from Asia Minor to Asia. And then if you add Europe in there, you've got Eurasia, right? Which is not a continent, but what we used to call this whole encapsulated area not America, right? So Europe went into Asia Minor, which went into Asia, Mongolia and China, right? So Eurasia was all of it, with Europe being one continent, Asia being another continent, and in between was Asia Minor. All right? And now we've got the connection of the names with this ancient map. Here, there's Asia, Macedonia, right? So now we're getting some of these ancient titles of kings and names making more sense. Paul went to Macedonia. Paul went to Galatia. Paul went to Cappadocia. I didn't hear about Pontus or Bithynia. So I don't, he was in Phrygia. I remember that. And finally, there is Armenia. And so Armenia really is the connection, the hard land that enters into what we know now as modern day Turkey. I forgot what all that color meant. But this is going to go into a Byzantine Ottoman Empire. And so we're going to figure that out as we move into or from BC to AD. As we do that movement, we're going to find out a little bit more. Okay, now I do want to, and then this is our lesson on the Philistines. Crete, named after Caphtorim on our Noah's descendants map, is also known in the Bible as Caphtor. So here, is Crete, and at Knossos, there is another World Heritage Site. So we're going to get into the World Heritage Sites tomorrow, as well as then the history that goes along with those World Heritage Sites, because that's the most prominent history. But again, so here we've got Caphtorim. So in our little blurb here, Crete, named Caphtorim on our Noah's descendants map, is also known in the Bible as Caphtor. This is the original home of the Philistines, according to the Bible, Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 23. The Philistines displaced the Avites. So we know Goliath is a Philistine. And this was the Philistines' original home. The original home of the Philistines, seafarers, warriors, was Crete. Okay. Now there were other people there on Crete before the Philistines. The Avites were there, and I'm getting from the Bible reading that there were another ites there dwelling before that the Avites displaced, and then according to AI, we're getting this that the Philistines displaced the Avites, and the Avim, who dwelt in villages as far as Gaza, the Caphtorim, who came from Caphtor, destroyed them and dwelt in their place. All right, now we've got who these people are. which is, and I said I thought they were Japheth. They were not. They are what? They're Hamites. Oh my goodness gracious. Here are the ites that were all listed. Entire insert map dominated by the descendants of Ham. Arvadites, Zamorites, Archites, Sinites, Sidonians, Amorites, Perizzites, Hittites, Hivites. That's the one I think the Avites replace. Jebusites and Girgashites. Those are almost all of them I'm familiar with in the Bible. So Crete, the descendants of Ham, AI is matching that table of nations information that they are descendants of Ham. These are then Canaanites, these descendants, and they are also Egyptian. To some extent, these are the gods of Egypt. Now, the other thing I came across was the fact that Egyptian gods, and I made this mistake on Thursday, so to clarify again, Egyptian gods, the Roman gods and the Greek gods are named alike. The Egyptian gods were not. So the Roman gods and the Greek gods, we've got them coming from Japheth. The Egyptian gods are coming from the Canaanites, the Hamites. They're Hamitic. They didn't call them Hamites. They're Hamitic. Well, maybe they did. I'm not sure. They're Hamitic. That's what we say. Okay, so that rolls us into the spot that we're at right now. Let's finish this slide here. Excavation in Philistine cities have found pottery and weapons that almost perfectly match those of Aegean Minoan style, confirming their island origin. So here's the evidence that Philistines did come from the island of Crete. We're seeing that this Minoan Aegean style, the Aegean Sea, Aegean style would be I think the Aegean Sea is north. Got to figure that one out a little bit. And if there's name changes there, that one I'm not sure about, and I should. But the first king in this area was King Manoah. So they are matching Philistine pottery and weapons that we see from the Philistines and in the Bible in Israel. It is Israel era, Gaza area, right? These Philistines or Cretans, they were called Cretans, became David's bodyguards after he killed Goliath. These people descended from giants. Deuteronomy 2:20 that says that was also regarded as a land of giants. Giants formerly dwelt there. Where did I get that from? The same Deuteronomy that's telling me that the Philistines displaced the Avites. So right before that, they're telling me that this land was regarded as a land of giants. Giants formerly dwelt there. So this comes to say to me, those giants were real gods, possibly pre-flood gods. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. That makes history to me so exciting. Not this BS about who killed who and whose battle and what's written on the wall. When you look at that, it ends up being so little information. And God said that his word will stand the test of time. And boy, has it stood the test of time. You can barely find any of those remnants, any of those relics that spell out 1/10 of what is spelled out for us in the Bible that then complements the very little information that we have from the historical relics. This is phenomenal. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. It is day 306 in the classroom. It is February 3rd. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm going to pull some more of those, glean some more of those comments from AI. So maybe we don't read all of them, although I found so many tidbits just that were in there that you would not have picked up on. The most interesting tidbits, right? Unless you read through the details. So maybe you'll find a tidbit in there. If we read through the details, we're going to find out a little bit more about Greece as we dig deep in the soil first. Tomorrow we'll probably look at the connection with our World Heritage Sites. Thanks so much for joining me here in the classroom where we find history so exciting. We're nerds. Those are nerds. Yeah, whatever. Okay, thanks so much for joining me here in the classroom where the nerds are making your mind, your body, and your spirit healthier. Thanks.